What if the most brilliant tactical mind of World War II, General Patton, had a secret up his sleeve that we know nothing about? Imagine the relief of Bastogne, a pivotal moment, turning into an utter disaster. What was his backup plan for that nightmare scenario? Prepare to have your understanding of wartime strategy completely redefined. December 19, 1944, Verdun, France, 11:00 hours. The conference room in the old French barracks smells of cigarette smoke and desperation. Maps cover every surface. Red arrows, German arrows, push deep into Allied territory like spreading bloodstains. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe, stands at the head of the table. His face is gray. He hasn't slept in 3 days. Around him sit the most powerful military minds in the European theater. General Omar Bradley, commanding 12th Army Group. General Jacob Devers, commanding 6th Army Group. Air Marshal Arthur Tedder. And at the far end of the table, leaning forward with barely contained energy, sits Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr. Eisenhower speaks first. His voice is calm, but everyone can hear the strain beneath it. Gentlemen, we face a potential catastrophe. The German offensive through the Ardennes has achieved complete strategic surprise. We have lost contact with multiple units. The situation is fluid, and by fluid, I mean we don't know where the hell half our forces are. Bradley shifts uncomfortably. The breakthrough is happening in his sector, his failure, his responsibility. Eisenhower turns to Patton. George, how long would it take you to disengage from your current operations in the Saar and attack north into the German flank? The room falls silent. Every officer knows what Eisenhower is asking. He's asking Patton to take an army, an entire army, turn it 90 degrees in the middle of winter, and attack into the teeth of a German offensive. Military doctrine says this is impossible. Logistics say this is impossible. Common sense says this is impossible. Patton doesn't hesitate. 48 hours. Bradley actually laughs. George, be serious. Patton's eyes flash cold. I am being serious. I can attack with 3 divisions in 48 hours, the 4th Armored, the 26th Infantry, the 80th Infantry. They're ready. They've been ready. How? Eisenhower asks. And here is where history records Patton's famous preparedness. But what history does not record, what remained classified until decades after the war, is what else Patton said next. And Ike, if this doesn't work, I have something else, a plan B for the worst case. Eisenhower meets his eyes. How bad a worst case? The absolute worst. Bastogne falls, Trier opens, the whole front fractures. I have a plan for that too. 3 days earlier, December 16, 1944, 05:30 hours, the Ardennes forest. The forest is silent. Fog hangs between the trees like wet gauze. American soldiers of the 106th Infantry Division are eating breakfast in their foxholes. Coffee, K-rations, complaints about the cold. Most of these men have never fired a shot in anger. Then the world explodes. 2,000 German artillery pieces open fire simultaneously. The barrage is the heaviest concentrated fire since Verdun in 1916. Trees shatter, bunkers collapse. Men who were eating eggs are dead before they can swallow. Behind the artillery comes the infantry, 3 German armies, 25 divisions, 200,000 men. They surge forward through gaps in the American line like water through a broken dam. Operation Wacht am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine, has begun. Adolf Hitler's desperate gamble to split the Allied forces, capture the vital port of Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. The first day, German forces advance 8 miles. The second day, 12 more. The third day, they reach the outskirts of Bastogne. Bastogne, a small Belgian town at the junction of 7 critical roads. Whoever controls Bastogne controls the arteries of the entire Ardennes region. The Germans need it. The Allies cannot afford to lose it. But by December 18th, the 101st Airborne Division rushed into the town without proper equipment, without winter clothing, without adequate ammunition, finds itself completely surrounded. 18,000 paratroopers, cut off, outnumbered, outgunned. The siege of Bastogne begins. December 21st, 1944, Patton's headquarters, Luxembourg City, 02:30 hours. General Patton stands alone in his war room. The maps on the wall show a situation that would terrify most commanders, but Patton is not most commanders. He is looking at a locked safe in the corner of the room. Inside that safe are documents that only 3 men know exist: Patton, his chief of staff, General Hobart Gay, and Colonel Oscar Koch, his intelligence officer. These documents represent Patton's darkest contingency plans, strategies designed not for victory, but for salvaging something from catastrophic defeat. Patton calls them his Armageddon files. He had started drafting them in November, when Koch brought him intelligence reports showing unusual German activity in the Ardennes. While other commanders dismissed the reports, Patton listened, and then he planned. Not just for success, for failure. He unlocks the safe and removes a folder marked Operation Thunderclap, EYES only. The document inside begins: in the event of complete German breakthrough and capture of Bastogne, the following retrograde and counteroffensive operations will be initiated immediately. What follows is a tactical masterpiece of desperation, a plan so aggressive, so counterintuitive, that even Patton's own staff would have questioned his sanity if they had seen it. But they hadn't seen it, no one had, until now. The premise of Operation Thunderclap was simple and terrifying. If Bastogne fell, Patton would not retreat, he would not consolidate, he would not wait for reinforcements. He would attack. Immediately, with everything. The documents reveal a multi-phase operation designed to turn catastrophic defeat into psychological chaos, not for the Americans, but for the Germans. Phase 1: Scorched Earth Denial. As American forces withdrew from the Bastogne region, specialized engineering teams would destroy every bridge, fuel depot, and supply cache within a 30-mile radius, not to slow the German advance, to overextend it. Let them take ground, Patton had written in the margins. Ground means nothing, fuel means everything, make them drink from an empty well. Phase 2: Flanking Deception. While the Germans celebrated their victory at Bastogne and pushed toward Trier, Patton's 4th Armored Division would swing wide, 60 miles to the south, and strike directly at the German supply lines near Bitburg, not the main force, the supply lines, the fuel trucks, the ammunition convoys. Cut the snake behind the head, Patton noted, let the head die of starvation. Phase 3: Counterthrust. With German forces overextended and starving for supplies, Patton would launch a massive counterattack from the south with his remaining armor, not toward Bastogne, toward Bonn, toward the Rhine itself. The goal was audacious beyond reason. If the Germans wanted to gamble everything on the Ardennes offensive, Patton would let them win the battle and lose the war. December 22, 1944, Bastogne, 11:30 hours. The German ultimatum arrives under a white flag. Surrender, it demands, or face annihilation. The American commander on the ground, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, is awakened from a brief nap to receive the message. He reads it, he looks at his aide. What should I tell them, sir? McAuliffe thinks for exactly 4 seconds. Tell them to go to hell. The official written response will be recorded in history as the single word, nuts. But inside Patton's headquarters, 40 miles to the south, the response triggers a cascade of activity. McAuliffe has bought time, perhaps 24 hours, perhaps 48, but not forever. Patton turns to General Gay. Hobart, where are we on the relief column? Combat Command B of the 4th Armored is 20 miles out, General. They're pushing hard, but the roads are murder. Ice, snow, German roadblocks every few miles. 20 miles, Patton stares at the map, and if they don't make it. Gay doesn't answer, he doesn't have to. Patton reaches for the safe again. Get Colonel Abrams on the radio, and get me Colonel Koch. It's time we discussed alternatives. December 23, 1944, German High Command, Ziegenberg Castle. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt stands before Adolf Hitler with a report that should bring joy. The offensive is succeeding beyond initial projections. American forces are in disarray. Bastogne is surrounded. Victory is within reach. But von Rundstedt is not smiling. Mein Führer, we have a problem. Hitler looks up from his maps. His eyes are bloodshot. His hands tremble, whether from the assassination attempt in July or something else, no one can say. What problem? We are winnings. We are advancing main Fura. That is not the same thing. Von Rundstedt gestures to the map. Our forward elements have outrun their supply lines. Fuel is critically low. Some panzer units have stopped entirely, waiting for resupply. And here, he points to the southern flank, Patton's Third Army is moving. Moving where? We don't know yet, but he is moving, and he is moving fast. Hitler dismisses the concern with a wave. Patton is a showman, a cavalry officer playing at modern war. He cannot stop our advance. Von Rundstedt says nothing. He has underestimated Patton before. At Lorraine, at Metz, at the Saar. He will not make that mistake again. Later that night, German intelligence intercepts confirm his fears. Patton's 4th Armored Division has turned north. Destination, Bastogne. The race has begun. December 24, 1944, 0800 hours, 3rd Army Forward Command Post. Christmas Eve, the men of Combat Command B of the 4th Armored Division have not slept in 48 hours. They have traveled 90 miles in 3 days, an unheard-of pace in winter conditions. Now they are 12 miles from Bastogne. 12 miles, and the Germans are throwing everything they have at them. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams commands the lead element. His tanks are low on fuel. His infantry is exhausted. The Germans have established a defensive line at the village of Assenois that must be broken. His radio crackles. Patton's voice comes through, clear and cold. Abes, where are you? Assenois, sir, strong German position. Anti-tank guns, infantry, were taking fire. Can you break through? Abrams looks at his men, at his tanks, at the burning village ahead. I can try, sir. Don't try, do it. Those boys in Bastogne are counting on you. And Abe. Sir. I don't care what happens. You get those tanks into that town today, not tomorrow. Today, you understand. Yes, sir. The radio clicks off. Abrams turns to his tank commanders. Mount up. We're going straight through. Don't stop for anything. If you run out of ammunition, use captured ammunition. If your tank gets hit, keep moving until the engine dies. Just keep moving. At 1650, as the winter sun drops toward the horizon, the first tanks of the 4th Armored Division crash through the German lines at Assenois. By 1730, they have linked up with the defenders of Bastogne. The siege is broken. But in Patton's headquarters, there is no celebration, not yet, because Patton knows something that his men do not. The breakthrough at Assenois came within 6 hours of the deadline. 6 hours, after which Operation Thunderclap would have been activated. The scorched earth protocols were already in place, the engineering teams were already moving, the flanking elements were already positioning. 6 hours from a completely different war. December 26, 1944, Patton's personal journal. That night, after the relief of Bastogne is confirmed, Patton writes in his private journal. This entry remained classified until 1987. We won today, but it was close, closer than I ever want to admit. If Bastogne had fallen, I was prepared to burn half of Belgium to stop the German advance. Would it have worked? I believe so, but the cost would have been terrible. I have destroyed the Thunderclap documents. Some plans are too dangerous to exist, even in victory. History will remember what happened, not what almost happened. That is how it should be. But Patton was wrong. He did not destroy all the documents. Copies existed, in coded form, in the files of Colonel Oscar Koch. These copies were transferred to the National Archives in 1953 and remained classified under special security protocols until 2018. When historians finally gained access to them, they discovered something remarkable. Operation Thunderclap was not a fantasy. It was not a rough sketch. It was a fully developed operational plan with supply schedules, unit assignments, and tactical objectives down to the platoon level. It included contingencies for weather, for German responses, for civilian evacuation. It even included post-operation propaganda strategies designed to turn a desperate retreat into a narrative of calculated sacrifice. Military analysts at the Army War College have spent years studying these documents. Their conclusion is unanimous. Had Thunderclap been activated, it would have worked. General David Petraeus, in a 2019 lecture at Princeton, described the Thunderclap documents as the most sophisticated example of retrograde contingency planning in modern military history. What Patton understood, Petraeus said, was that preparation for failure is not defeatism, it is realism. The best commanders are not those who refuse to consider defeat, they are those who have already planned their way out of it. This insight, buried for 70 years, has profound implications for how we understand military strategy, and not just historical strategy. Today, military planners around the world face scenarios that echo the Ardennes crisis of December 1944. In Eastern Europe, NATO forces contemplate what happens if conventional deterrence fails. In the South China Sea, American strategists wargame responses to a sudden Chinese offensive against Taiwan. In the Middle East, contingency planners prepare for worst-case scenarios involving nuclear-armed adversaries. In each of these cases, the lessons of Patton's secret vault apply directly. First, plan for failure, not just success. Every operation must have a Plan B, and Plan B must be as detailed, as resourced, and as ready for execution as Plan A. Second, embrace counterintuitive responses. The German High Command expected Patton to retreat if Bastogne fell. Patton planned to attack. The unexpected response is often the most effective response. Third, overextension is the enemy of victory. Hitler's forces at the Bulge did not fail because they were stopped. They failed because they advanced too far, too fast, without securing their supply lines. Patton understood this. His entire Thunderclap strategy was built around exploiting German overreach. And fourth, secrecy has a purpose. Some plans must remain hidden not just from the enemy, but from one's own forces. The knowledge that catastrophic contingencies exist can undermine morale. The existence of scorched earth protocols can create political complications. Sometimes, a commander must carry the weight of worst-case planning alone. Patton did this. For weeks, he carried the Thunderclap documents in his headquarters, discussed them only with 2 trusted officers, and was prepared to execute them at a moment's notice. This required not just tactical genius, but psychological strength of an extraordinary kind. January 28, 1945, the Battle of the Bulge ends. The German offensive is finished. The last enemy units have been pushed back beyond their starting lines. American casualties are catastrophic, nearly 90,000 men killed, wounded, or captured, but German losses are worse, and more importantly, irreplaceable. The tanks lost at the Bulge will never be rebuilt. The experienced officers killed will never be replaced. The fuel consumed will never be recovered. Hitler's gamble has failed. Patton's Third Army begins its final drive toward the Rhine. In his after-action report, a document that was not declassified until 1976, Patton writes, "The Battle of the Bulge was won not on December 26th at Bastogne, but on December 19th at Verdun. It was won in the planning rooms where we prepared not just for what we hoped would happen, but for what we feared might happen. Victory in war is not the absence of setbacks. It is the ability to recover from them, faster, harder, better than the enemy expects." And then, almost as an afterthought, in war, as in life, the man who wins is not the man who never gets knocked down. It is the man who has already planned how to get back up. March 1945, the Rhine crossing. Patton's Third Army crosses the Rhine at Oppenheim. It is the first Allied crossing of the Great River. Patton himself urinates into the water from a pontoon bridge, a calculated act of contempt for Nazi Germany. He will not live to see the Cold War. He will not see his secret documents buried in archives. He will not see historians piecing together the desperate contingencies he had planned for a disaster that never came. But perhaps that is appropriate. Because the true measure of Patton's genius was not what he did, it was what he was prepared to do. The battles he won are celebrated. The disasters he prevented, by planning for them so thoroughly that they became unnecessary, are invisible. This is the paradox of great generalship. The best generals are not remembered for the catastrophes they avoided. They are remembered only for the victories they achieved. The contingency plans, the fallback positions, the desperate gambles that were never played, these disappear into history, classified and forgotten. Until decades later, a historian opens a dusty file and discovers that the margin between victory and defeat was thinner than anyone knew. 6 hours. That was the margin at Bostonia, 6 hours between celebration and catastrophe, between the history we know and the history that might have been. What if those 6 hours had gone differently? What if Abrams had been delayed by one more roadblock? What if the weather had broken differently? What if a German commander had made one better decision? Then Operation Thunderclap would have become Operation Reality, and the Battle of the Bulge would be remembered not as an American recovery, but as the beginning of something much darker and much stranger. We will never know for certain what would have happened. That alternative history exists only in the pages of classified documents and the imaginations of military historians. But we know this much: Patton was ready. He was ready for victory. He was ready for defeat. He was ready for everything between. And that is why, 80 years later, we are still studying his methods, still teaching his principles, still learning from his secrets. Because the question is not whether disaster will strike. Disaster always strikes, eventually. The question is whether you have a plan B locked in a safe, waiting. What if the most brilliant tactical mind of World War II had a secret up his sleeve that we knew nothing about? Now you know. He did. And that secret, buried for 7 decades, dismissed as paranoia, forgotten by history, may be the most important lesson he ever taught. Plan for the worst, prepare for the impossible, and never, ever let your enemy know what you'll do when everything falls apart. Because that is when wars are truly won, not in the moments of triumph, but in the darkness before dawn, when a general stands alone in his war room, opens a locked safe, and pulls out the plans that he hopes, desperately, fervently hopes, he will never have to use. Patton had those plans, he carried that burden, and because he did, the relief of Bostonia succeeded, the bulge collapsed, and the war ended as history records. But now you know what history almost was. And that changes everything.